Please join me in a warm 10-time welcome for Dr. Daggett.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning to everyone. Delighted and honored to be here and apprehensive. These are tough times. They are not simply tough times here, they are tough times in every school district in America. American public education has been under siege. We've had every naysayer group figure out what we need to do, even though they've never sat in our chairs, never had to deal with the issues we had to deal with. I've come to you today with great admiration for public education. I've been in every state in this country multiple times. I've spoken in 29 other countries. And every time I return to America, I thank God I live in America. And one of the reasons is the American public education system. I've seen it up close and personal, folks. Hands down, the U.S. has the finest education system in the world. We have no parallel. And the only place in America, only place in the world that doesn't seem to understand that today is America. And I say that not because I've spent my life in public education. I say it because I'm a parent and a grandparent. And I view schools through the eyes now of that lens. My wife Bonnie and I, we have 5 kids. Now my kids are older than your kids, because when I look around this audience, my kids are older than most of you. Okay? My kids are 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45. Laugh all you want. All I can tell you is that it took us 5 years to figure out what was happening. We figured it out. See, I went to school before there was something called sex education, okay? The oldest of my 5 kids would have made it anywhere in the world. She's absolutely gifted and talented. It's not Dad's physical thing. Second one was a pretty good student. Third one, he loved to go to school. He just didn't go to class too often. Do you have any in your district like that? But it was our 4th child that taught my wife Bonnie and I, especially as we traveled internationally, how unique American education is. Her name is Audrey. Audrey has severe mental retardation. Audrey has autism. But her biggest disability is she has very serious epilepsy. Audrey seldom has a day without at least 1 grand mal seizure. Do you know what that does to body and mind after 42 years? The greatest accomplishment my family ever saw in public education was not my oldest daughter, who won every kind of state and national award you can imagine. It was when we as a family worked with school personnel and support system. We finally got Audrey as a preteen potty trained. Now, until you lived in that arena, it's hard to comprehend. Who in this room works in special education? Thank you for what you do. But you know what every special educator in the auditorium knows? It takes everybody in the auditorium, doesn't it? Why do we have the best schools in the world? Because you tell me, what kids do we educate, folks? And the second you educate all kids, the dynamics change. And it's easy to try to figure out what we should do in schools if you don't understand the complexity of the kids we face every day. And that complexity is getting bigger and deeper with more and more kids coming to us out of poverty with more and more challenges every day. Bonnie and I thought we totally understood it until child number 5. His name is Paul. I don't know if Bob Daggett was in the room, but he was happy to be here last night. Bob was a teacher. He's one of your board members. Bob was a teacher many years ago in Williamsville. And he and I served on a couple state committees together. He knew my wife. Bob reminded me of the story, and he asked me about it last night. 30 years ago, last September 16th, when our youngest son stepped off of the school bus in northern New York State, He was run over by a drunken driver. Paul suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was in a coma and on life support systems for 9 months. Paul lost the functions of speech and hearing from brain damage, but more importantly from multiple skull fractures that severed his ears and crushed his vocal cords. Paul has such ataxia that if you saw him with me, you would swear he had severe CP. That is common with traumatic brain injury. But ladies and gentlemen, despite all those disabilities, that young man in this country, and only in this country could have happened, is a 4-year college graduate. He does not have a good job. He has a great job in information management systems. Paul is married and they have 3 young boys. It never would have happened without the education system of this nation. So I come to you with great admiration for what you do. But I also come really fearful. See, I think we have the best schools in the world, not because we have the highest standards. Forgive me, if you think we have really high academic standards, I'm going to badly depress you. So why would I say we got the best schools if we don't have standards? See, New York State, it's not a case that we got too high of standards. It's a case we got too many standards. The state has never seen a standard it does not like. And we just keep shoving more and more and more into an overcrowded school day and school year. And at the same time, serving more and more difficult kids. See, we have the best schools because we're trying to address excellence and equity at the exact same moment. Now, I'm going to say politically incorrect thing. Excellence and equity are in conflict. I can get you to excellence in a hurry. Let me pick and choose who I'm going to educate. And every teacher in this room will be wildly successful. I just don't want to live in that kind of world. But you know what my family's figured out? I believe America is beginning to figure out? Equity is really, really expensive. Costs a lot of money to address equity. And you can't afford equity if you don't have economic success. And you cannot and you will not have economic success unless you have relevant, and I underscore the word relevant, academic success. And so where I'm going to come at you today is that we collectively have to figure it out. And folks, we in the auditorium have to figure it out. Not wait for somebody else to figure it out. We've got to figure out what that means. What does relevant academic success look like in the 21st century? I think we're about to be able to do that, fortunately, because I believe we are now entering what I call the post-Common Core era. It's not like Common Core and the test and the teacher evaluation issues are all done. But we've lived them painfully. And what's now has happened, it has consumed us as an educational institution, not only here in this state but across the country for the last 4 or 5 years. Totally consumed us. To the point where we didn't have a whole lot of time to think or react to anything else. And while we were so consumed on those Common Core, which, by the way, were written in 2006 through 2008, before most of the technology we use every day today had even been conceptualized, that what happened is the world outside of school, pushed by technology, changed fundamentally for our kids. And what has happened is, in the post-Common Core era, it's like suddenly we've been given a chance to wake up and come out of the abyss we've been in. And so, in that post-Common Core era, something that's ushering it in is the new federal legislation. Every Student Succeed Act. How many have heard of it? It replaces No Child Left Behind. Anybody ever hear of that? Okay. It was passed in December. Interesting thing happened. Washington today, Washington, D.C., is politically polarized. Would everybody agree with that? I mean, one side said something, the other side's going to say the opposite. Doesn't matter what it, they are totally politically polarized, as I'll show you before we're done, totally being driven by social media. Totally politically polarized. They can't agree on anything. But in that environment, every student succeed at passed in record time with almost unanimous vote of approval on both sides of the political aisle. How did that happen? What I'm going to try to show you, there's good and bad to this. Basically, Washington gave up on public education. And the good thing about that is, they're going to be out of our hair a little bit. The bad thing about it is, we may not have the resources from them that we used to have. I'll show you why before we're done. What happened is, if we go way back, 1983, anybody remember what National Report, how many of you in the room are so old you were working in schools in 1983? Okay, and I'm amongst them. Hands way up, let's say. Okay, good. Let's try something else. If any of you don't think you're old like me, how many in the room were not yet born in 1983? More than that were working in school. But for those who are around a long time, or those of you who studied the history of education, which some of us have already lived, what national report came out in 1983 about American education? The nation at risk. And we were frightened because one nation had technologically passed America by. Anybody remember what nation it was? It was Japan. We were frightened. They passed us by. And so a group put a lot of pressure on elected officials to begin to reform American schools. That was followed in this state by the Regents Action Plan, followed by something called the Compact for Learning. Some have been around a while, remember these terms. Followed by No Child Left Behind, followed by Common Core. 33 straight years. What group is it that has been putting all the pressure on elected officials in America for 33 straight years to change our schools? What group is it? Is it the kids coming to school demanding higher standards? Let's be honest. Is it us in this room collectively coming together demanding we be made to do more and different things? Who is it, folks? It's the business community. I'm not saying that good or bad, but the first step in solving a problem is to define the problem. It's the business community. And they kept putting pressure on the elected officials to do something. And so Congress tried. And everything they tried, every iteration from the nation at risk, in this state, the Regents Action Plan, to the Compact for Learning, to No Child Left Behind, to Common Core, to new teacher evaluation, with each iteration, I would like to respectfully submit to you, they made the situation worse. With each iteration. They were well intended. And what Congress finally said is, we give up. We can't solve this anymore. And so what they began to do is look around the country to see what was happening. And there had been a 9-year study going on with the Council of Chief State School Officers. Because they've been asked to do this study with a National Governors Association and a series of business leaders. I had the privilege of chairing the committee, which was to go across America and try to find the nation's most rapidly improving schools. Now, I want to underscore something. I didn't say highest performing schools. If you want highest performing schools, just begin in the most affluent communities. These are the nation's most rapidly improving. These are schools that were in the bottom 10 or 20% 10 years ago, now in the top 10 to 20%. Don, you're going to bring Sue Sakowitz in this summer to work here in the district, and that's what you were referring to, I think, about the summer activity. Sue's the principal of one of these schools. It's in Brockton, Massachusetts. And they said, let's look at what these schools are doing differently than the rest of us. If you put the percentage of children who are proficient or advanced on state tests up the left-hand side, and you put the percentage of kids who are on free and reduced lunch across the bottom, they said, let's look at these schools. Highest performing with high and free and reduced lunch. That's the group that the National Commission had been studying. And so I was asked back in the fall, tell us, what are these schools doing differently than the rest of the country? You know what I told them? Told the Congressional Education Committee? They stopped listening to you. They stopped listening to you. It's not that you were trying to do anything bad, you were actually trying to save the system. It didn't work. They in effect said, look, our challenges are so deep. We've got incredible number of kids on free and reduced lunch. Our special ed, when you have that, your special ed percentage goes up. We don't have enough resources. We're getting killed in 12 directions. What we're going to do is stop responding to all the incoming fire and say, time out, we're going to take control. We're going to take control of our own destiny. And how we're going to do that, and see if you think it makes sense. They said, we're going to put a stake in the ground 5 years out. Try to determine absolutely the best we can what kids need to know, do, and be like in 5 years. In this changing world we live in. And figure out where we can have the greatest amount of impact in the shortest amount of time with these kids. And if you don't like what we do, state ed departments in Washington, come take our schools over and try to do any better yourself. Interesting scenario. That's what I challenge you to do. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to put a stake in the ground 5 years out. The stuff I share, most of it will not be a big surprise to you. Would you all agree that the world has changed a little bit because of technology and dynamics? And I'm going to put that stake in the ground and ask you during the coming months to just think about it. I will then show you how some of these nation's most rapidly improving schools actually then responded to those changes. You know what I want you to do? I want you to take control. But that means everybody. And everybody means everybody. As I told the parents last night, that means from living room to classroom. This is not just about schools. This means from classroom to boardroom. We got to get everybody on the same page. And let me try to take you through that storyline. And no two districts are going to do it the same way, because every district's got their own DNA. Until you understand that DNA, you can't change your schools. These schools were future focused. That's where they put the stake in the ground 5 years out. They took control, refused to be controlled. What Congress did with Every Student Succeed Act is I don't know if you know this or not, but they gave up on AYP. They said, we're not defining AYP anymore. USDOE, you're not responsible for AYP anymore. It's a state and local decision. You still got to work to improve students, because wouldn't we all agree that we want to have continuous annual improvement if we can? But we're not going to define what that is. You define it. And that's going to play out different in every state. State of Georgia, their legislature just made a decision over the next 3 years to back off of all state tests and 100% turn it back to the school districts. Florida is pondering the same legislation. I do not know where New York is going to go, but my sense is it's going to be a hybrid. And here becomes the question. I understand why we complain bitterly about the test and the over-focus on the test. And I think we did overdo the test. But if you're not going to use the test, tell me what it is you are going to use. Because to think for a moment that we can have no accountability is, we all know, not really reasonable. What the legislation calls for is for innovation. They say innovation. And the key thing about innovation, they're saying we want to have you put career ready on equal academic footing with college ready. And I want to be clear, it didn't say put college prep and CTE on equal academic footing. It said put career ready on equal academic footing with college ready. We have a tendency to think that means automatically the programs we have in place. Most of these most rapidly improving schools said, you know what? Our programs were well designed for the 20th century. Maybe we really got to do some things differently. We go back to 83, the nation at risk, no child left behind, Common Core. Business is the one that kept defining the problem. But what business did is they readily admit they didn't know how to solve the problem. And so what they did was turn to what I call the inside the Beltway group. They went to all the education groups in Washington and said, solve it for us. You know, who wrote the Common Core? It wasn't business. They didn't have a single person on any of the committees. They went to the groups, National Association of Teachers of English Language Arts. They went to the National Math Teachers Association. They went to the National Science Teachers Association. They went to ACTE. They went to the National Association of Secondary School Principals, National Association of Elementary School Principals, AASA, that's the National Superintendent Group, National School Board, UFT, AFT. They went to all the groups, and forgive me, what the groups did, well-intended, they doubled down on the past. And that's why we got more and more stuff shoved into the box. Because it's hard for anybody to figure out what to take away. You put a stake in the ground 5 years out, let me tell you where you need to start. Before you decide to add one more thing, for every one thing you add, you need to take two things off the plate. And everybody claps. Wait till you try to do it. Because somebody is protecting every piece of something. Everybody supports change. Just not the nitrous. You got to take support. And you clap because you know it's true. We are asking to do too many things, too short of a period of time, with too complex of kids. In an institution that has been financially choked. You've got to take some things away if you're mad at it. In effect, what they've done is hand the ball to us. And so I ask you, what are you going to measure? Because we've been inundated for 5 years, we are perceived by non-educators. Now, I'm going to say a lot of politically incorrect things you don't want to hear. This is one of them. We are increasingly being perceived as non-educated, by the non-educators, as simply trying to protect the turf. We got to get beyond that. Because what I'm going to show you is we're going to need those non-educators if we're ever going to turn this system around. And they've handed the ball to us. So how are you going to measure it? If not the test, then what? Let me tell you where I think we are. I think Washington is dumbfounded by the fact that these two people have had such an incredible influence on the national election. Could anybody in this room have guessed a year ago that we would be sitting where we are on this national election? And I'm going to make an observation, because I think Congress has concluded this. I think both national political parties have concluded it. And I have the ability, the advantage of doing some consultation with both, because nobody can figure out what party I belong to. It's just the way I want it to be. I believe, forgive me, if you're a Donald Trump supporter or a Bernie Sanders supporter, I believe nobody is really for either one of these, especially Donald Trump. I think what they are is against the establishment. This is an anti-establishment movement, we're seeing. And do you understand what they just did with education? They just made us the establishment. We're not going to fight this battle anymore. We've tried to fight it from Washington for 33 years. We keep losing. Give it back to them. You're the new establishment. And let me ask you, how are we going to deal with the non-educators on this one? Let me try something. How many in your room have a son or a daughter who is a preteen, a teen, or in their early 20s? Okay, great. If everybody had just raised your hands, how many of you hope the person you just raised your hands about, sometime in the next decade, they become independent? Is there anybody that doesn't want that? And if there is, you are a very sick person. Let me ask you another question. Honestly, when you think about this, how many in the room know a recent four-year college graduate, or soon to be a four-year college graduate, who is now back at home or about to return to mom and dad without a job that pays very much, so that they either have to live with mom and dad or make the decision to go to graduate school because they can't find meaningful employment, or they're off on their own but their parents are still having to help them financially? Hands way up. Keep your hands way up if you know somebody. Keep them way up. Keep them way up. And anybody who hasn't got their hands up, look at the rest of this room. What happened, folks? Come on. These are our success stories. These are the ones we brag about on graduation night. What happened? What happened is America changed. And I don't like it. But I can't stop it. And as more and more, I will show you before the end of this presentation, that as a higher and higher and higher percentage each passing year, and accelerating with each year, of these kids who return back home to your middle-class families, they're going to point the finger at somebody. You know what Congress said? It's not going to be us. So what did these schools do? What we found is that they approach school reform differently than the rest of us. Most of us have what I call a fixed mindset. How many know Carol Dweck's work? Okay, I'm going to, by the way, at the end of the presentation, in a minute, I'm going to get sliding through with a lot of PowerPoint slides. I'm going to make my PowerPoint slides available to anybody that wants them in the audience, and then also send you to a website where the slides are backed up by white papers, or what I call the notes. Because some of the stuff I get into, I think the real issue is you've got to figure out how most of the stuff I'm going to share with you today needs to be shared with students and their parents. End of the line. That is the group we've got to influence the most. Okay? The parents. But most schools have a fixed mindset. Most schools are working really hard to try to get better despite all the challenges we have. I call it a fixed mindset. And what we keep doing is looking at what we have in place and deciding what, if anything, we can change. It's a fixed mindset. It's based on the past. The nation's most rapidly improving schools had this growth mindset. They put a stake in the ground 5 years out, and they had less stress. Trying to figure out with a fixed mindset what to change has created great stress. Because as I said now for about the fourth time, the box is overflowing. These other schools had this growth mindset. Put a stake in the ground, figure out what kids need to do, and try to build back. That's what we'll try to do today. Because what they did was open up the box and say, are there some things we can do differently? As I go through my presentation, remember I'm not politically correct, I believe education is like every other industry in one respect. You can break us into thirds. There's a third of the people in the auditorium who like every new idea they ever hear. This group is in a perpetual state of excitement. Okay? They have never heard an idea they don't like, and they'll try anything. There's another third that are interested in improvement, but not quite sure that every new idea has merit. And they need to be evaluated pretty carefully and tried out. And forgive me, there's another third in every organization in the country that basically says, no way, no way. I signed on to do what I'm doing, not something else. I think one of the strategic errors we made in public education is we didn't recognize that. I've told John King that. I've told school superintendents that across this country. You can't change everybody at once. My advice to you in this school district is let the top 1/3 try some things. Just let them try it. See if they can get it to work. That's what these districts did. The middle 1/3 will watch. And the second it works, the middle 1/3 will want to do it. And then collectively we'll deal with and bring along that 1/3 that was most resistant. If you try to move too fast, the cultural mentality is the bottom third and the middle third come together. And it looks like we're trying to block everything. Change needs to be evolutionary, not revolutionary. Revolutionists get killed. So let's see what they have done. It was a living room to classroom to boardroom approach. And it all began by looking at emerging trends. And so one introduction to look at emerging trends. I want to put a stake in the ground 5 years out, and I want to build back. And when you do that, you've got to look at the impact of technology, especially on the workplace, because remember what you wanted for your kids. You wanted for your kids, those that have kids mid-teens to early 20s, you ultimately want them to be independent. That means they've got to be able to go to work sooner or later. And the workplace is being so dramatically changed by technology. Today's kids have been transformed how they play. It's changed virtually everything in their lives. Technology is not the problem for the kids. Anybody in the room have an iPhone they can give me? Thank you very much. Who else would like to give me one? I got that. Thank you very much. 5 kids, 11 grandchildren, I can use it. By the way, remember I told you 5 kids, 11 grandkids? Literally? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Everything orderly in my family. How many in the room own a device like, it doesn't have to be an iPhone, but a device like this? Hands way up. Everybody owns a device somehow way up high. Let me see. Okay, way up high. Okay, how many in the room do not? Okay, about 4 or 5 people. Anybody who doesn't, don't be offended. But you're living in a world fundamentally different than the kids live in. Am I right? These devices, do they play games on? Are they almost addicted to them? Okay, yell out for me, what has this replaced in the last 5 years in your life? What do you no longer have or need because you have this? Yell out some things. A data plan, a bank. Calendar. Friend. Very good. Right, who said friend? That's a great one. A camera, a flashlight, a photo album, a dictionary, an encyclopedia, a landline. The list is unbelievable, isn't it? Sometimes we want to have some fun. The group's too big. Put 5 people in a circle and give them 2 minutes and see how many things they can come up with. I've had groups come up with most I've had so far is 42. It replaced. Do you let the kids use these when they take the state test? No, for very good reason. They would what? Yell it out. Cheat, exactly. Tell me how they would cheat. They look up the answer. What else might they do? They text each other. Darn kids. They might either use resources or work with others. What are the 2 most basic skills you need to be successful in the 21st century workplace? What do we call it in schools? Cheating. Now, look, I'm not blaming you on this. This is the education establishment, okay? You got it? Because, see, what we've tried to do in American education is we've tried to take 21st century technology and make it conform to the 20th century schools. Rather than transforming the 20th century schools to prepare kids for how to use this in the 21st century. Because I would like to suggest to you, they are misusing the devil out of this thing. And I'm going to show you. And we're assuming no responsibility. Because we had to get on with Common Core and new tests. None of which this had anything to do with. Anybody know what the PISA tests are? The International PISA exam? 65 nations now take. PISA. Do you know that their new tests have this? If you can Google a piece of information, they give it to you in the test question. What are they testing? The ability to apply knowledge. See, before we had all this technology, it was really important that we shoved a lot of knowledge into kids' heads. Because if we didn't get it in their heads, they didn't have it. They do have it today, at a fingertip. Problem is, what they pull up may not be correct. Because we haven't really taught them how to evaluate the data, much less how to use the data, which are the 2 key skills. Interesting dynamic. Over the next 5 years, how are you going to evaluate students? See, I'm anti the test for a different reason than you might think. I understand this test really, really well. I used to be in the state ed department. But I left 25 years ago. Do not blame me on anything. And I spent 7 years of my life managing the division of the testing program. And there's nothing we test you can't Google. But you have to write assessments. But if we don't use these assessments, what are you going to use? And if we're not simply supposed to shove knowledge into their head, what is it we're really supposed to be teaching? What do they really need? I want you to think about this. How many of you have ever used Uber? An extraordinary story. It was created in 2009. It's only 7 years old. It's worth $64 billion. That's more than most of you will make in your lifetime. Okay? $64 billion. It's the largest taxi company in the world. But it owns no taxis. And who's trying to fight it? Facebook is the world's most popular media owner. But it creates no content. Alibaba is now the world's most valuable retailer. It's worth more than the 6th largest traditional retailers in the world. And it owns no merchandise. Airbnb is the largest hotel accommodator in the world. Owns no real estate. But schools? You want to have a revolution in the school district? Try to change the bus schedule. Try to change and consolidate a school building. Whoa. Don't get mad at me. But if Rick Van Winkle woke up today, the place he would be most comfortable in would be one of our schools. And it's not just you, it's our communities. We all know what schools we're supposed to be. In fact, we in this room especially, because almost everybody in this room is like me. We liked school when we were kids. In fact, we liked school so much. We went to college to major in school. So that when we graduated from college, we could return to school. To do to others would have been done to us. It almost sounds incestuous. Well, we were working on Common Core, and not because you chose to, okay? While you were working on the new assessments and the teacher evaluations, let's look at what happened to technology. If we go back to 2005, that's the amount of total information that was in the web. By 2010, it has multiplied almost 6 times. By 2015, almost another 6-fold. But because of what I'm going to show you, because it's something called Web 3.0, it is now beginning to explode exponentially. It was interesting because in the parent community group last night, we had 4 different people from IT. I didn't have any idea they were from IT, the IT industry. But they all came up to me afterwards and told me, 2 of them said, they thought this chart was too conservative. The amount of information that's going to be out there is unbelievable. What's even more unbelievable is how you're going to be able to access it. Today's children, these technologies and information systems are changing their lives. I want to go back and look at the web for a minute. Web 1.0, the first wave of the web. It was called the informational web. The best example I can give you of the informational web is Google. How many have Googled something in the last 48 hours? Isn't it extraordinary how fast it gets you information? Okay, and how many of the questions it can answer? But it's one way. Unless you ask it a question, nothing happens. It's called informational web. Google's the best example. Web 2.0. By the way, anybody know what year Google was patented? 1998. About 2002, before it really took legs, today we use it. I will show you before the end. Google is going to dramatically impact public education in the next 3 to 5 years. Google has a corporate policy. Their number 1 revenue source is going to be K-12 education. And we're paying no attention. Let me keep going. Web 2.0 was called relational. What is it? It's Facebook. It's interactive. How many in the room are on Facebook? Okay. Are the kids on? No, they used to be. Why aren't they? Because you are. What are they on, folks? What, Instagram, chat, Vine, Snapchat. Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is just beginning to come over us like a tidal wave. And we're seeing it's happening so quickly to us we hardly even recognize it. It's going to profoundly change how the web works. It has artificial intelligence. It has very deep data mining. The best example I can give you, again, is Google. Let me pick on a couple of people in the audience. Have you Googled anything in the last few days? Have you, sir? Okay. Would you guess that these 2, did they get any ads? Did they get the same ads? Why not? Age difference. What else? Gender. What else? Their history. Their history online, right? What they Googled, what they bought. You know what else? Who they emailed and what they bought in Google. A database. How many room use Gmail? Gmail. Right, I know. Are you getting ads? How come? Read your mail. Exactly. It's got everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a basic question for you. If Google and Gmail has that information, who else is going to have that information? Anybody who wants it. Anybody who wants it, versions of it. If you keep giving it to them. Let me give you an example. But before I do, if we go back and look at the evolution of our society, in the agrarian age, the key resource is land. In the industrial age, which Buffalo made it market, it was raw materials. We're in the information age. And the key resource is data. Which means education is far, far, far more important than ever before. That is how you use and analyze information, not simply what you recall. How many in the room have gone to a supermarket or drugstore recently and bought something? What was on the back of your receipt? Coupons. Did she get the same coupons as him? How come? What they bought, what else? You know, when we gave them a card, you got the little card, guess what they got? Got all kinds of data on it, don't they? It's not just what you bought. It's all the other things that we yelled out about Google. Supermarkets have got it. Drugstores have got it. Gmail's got it. Google's got it. See, what's happening with that explosion in technology and information is this. And it's why we're in the information age. Today, the technology can be both a telescope and a microscope at the exact same time. It's a microscope because we can dig really deeply on him. We can quickly determine everything he's done online. And you know, kids have no clue about it. They have no clue that they're leaving a digital footprint, I call it a tattoo. And figure out what he's bought. And as the databases begin to merge, it becomes deeper and deeper. And they can predict your actions and your desires because they drove deep. That's the microscope. It's also a telescope because you know what we got? We don't only have you. We have all 600 people in the auditorium. We got over 300 million people in America. We got everybody in the world. And we can begin to see what actions you have a tendency to do. We can find out what you like. And we can begin to find people who have similar characteristics of you and target what they're doing because you might have an interest in it. It's the telescope, it's the microscope concept. Keep it in mind as I go through what our kids need to know, do, and be like. And you put a statement around 5 years out. And one of the areas I'll begin with is what it has done to how we all communicate. Let's go to us, not even the kids. There are kind of 3 levels of relationships we all have. The first one are what I call our most intimate friends and acquaintances. These are the people, and they're a very, very, very small group of them. Most all of you in the room probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at most in this category. The people you share your most intimate thoughts, hopes, dreams, and fears with. Hopefully, if you're married, that's your spouse. It might be one of your siblings. It might be a lifetime friend you've had. It might be somebody from your church. There's a very small inner circle we all have. And just for a moment, in your own minds, think about who they are. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you who they are. But have you got it out? They can almost tell by looking at you how your day's going, can't they? Then we have a second group. The second group is what I call our community. Our community are those people that we see every day or see often, we interact with a lot, and we know a fair amount about them. But we don't have the same intimate relationship as that inner group. Who are they? For you in this auditorium, it's everybody else in your school building who's sitting in the auditorium. You know your colleagues. You probably know the name of your children. You have a sense of what their interests are. You care about them, either in a negative or a positive way. They are your next door neighbors. They are the people whose kids play on the Little League with your kids. They are the people you go to church with. They are our community. And historically, in Middle America, and believe me, this community, as I drove around it last night, is Middle America. They are our community. And then we have a third group. And the third group is a group that we don't see very often, a group we historically do not talk to very often, but a group we have a very deep common bond with. I used the principal here last night as my example. When he goes to the State Principals Association meeting, he can walk into the lobby and get in a discussion with another high school principal just like this on some issues, can't he? Because they share this common interest, responsibility in a narrow area. If you're a high school English teacher and you go to the State English Teachers Association meeting, they're the other English teachers that you're there with. You don't see them. You might not even know their names, but boy, you can, at lunch, you can get in real conversation with them about one thing or another. Make sense? The third group. What I'm going to say next is a little abstract, but I think you'll pick up on it in a hurry. Social media has caused the third group to supersede itself inside the second group. It has caused us to become our new way to communicate. And that communication is instant, and they are people who think just like us. You know who has mastered the social media? Donald Trump. Think about it. Bernie Sanders. Their followers communicate constantly. And they feed off of each other, don't they? Now I'm saying Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, so it's either side. Okay. But would you guess that the people inside their two groups have little tolerance for the people outside their group? Would you guess that people outside their group have little tolerance for the people inside their groups? Social media has caused this nation to become politically, socially polarized at an extraordinary rate. And today's children have always lived in that world. And the sense of community that we think of is gone. And the problem is, when you become isolated, my wife is a full-time, unpaid advocate for the disabled. You probably can understand why, given our family. Because of what I do, she's able to get into a lot of doors that often are hard to get into in terms of senior elected officials. And so the people that she interacts with all day long, they're also all good advocates for children with disabilities. A couple weeks ago, she said, "Bill, you can't believe it. I'm not going to give you a person's name. You wouldn't know this person. Joe, you would know this. Joe Shannon's on the staff. You would know this person. This person is a die-hard advocate for the disabled and an unrelenting supporter of Donald Trump's." Does anybody remember what Donald Trump did to the reporter with cerebral palsy? My wife said, "How could you support him when he did that to a disabled?" She said, "Well, this person who spent this other person spent her life advocating for him." Well, you got to give a little leeway on some things. It talks to how deep that issue is. I'm the outside person here. Please, 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 don't let that happen to your school district. Don't think that those that we communicate with are necessarily seeing things the same way as those we don't communicate with. But more importantly, please, please, make our kids understand that how they're communicating, if they're not careful, is going to be destructive to their lives. Because anything they do online and begin to share is powerful in terms of its impact. I'm going to give you an example. One time, I want to tell you, I'm embarrassed to give you. It has nothing to do with me. I'm older than all the rest of you. So what I'm going to talk about next is not easy for my generation to talk about. I'm going to talk about sex for a minute. My generation did not talk about this stuff. Okay? How many have seen or heard of this website? If you have, good to go. If you want to, I'm going to tell you a story. Remember, I'm going to give you my PowerPoint. Also, later, if you want to find out about this one, if you Google, just as it's written there, Good to Go with no space. Good to Go app. It's an app that was created a few months ago. Originally started by a group of college co-eds. And they had begun to talk about this and said, you know what? Sometimes we do things on a date that the next morning we wish we hadn't done. And so what we need to do is do a gut check to make sure that we're sober enough, not on drugs, and we're in full command of what we're doing and understand. So they created an app, which I can't even comprehend this, how anybody would use it, but over 40,000 young ladies used it. And what it is if you're on a date and you've gone a little further than you're saying, wait a minute, do I really want to do this? You're supposed to pull out your app. And ahead of time, you've answered a bunch of questions on this app. And you've put in your name, your phone number, your address, your email, and your sexual preferences of what you think you would like to do or not do. And what it does is it pulls it up and it doesn't give you the answers that you had put in already. It now just asks you the same questions to see if it matches what you thought when you were sober. Okay? Yeah, oh my God. I can't even comprehend it, okay? And then you're supposed to give it to the person you're with, and they're supposed to answer some questions. And then you're good to go. Okay? When you read the app that you buy, down at the bottom, the third line says they can sell the information. In the system, go Google it, okay? The system got breached. Over 40,000 young women. That data is out in public space forevermore. You want to think about the consequences of that? Now guess what else they found? And some of you are Googling it. It's good. Go do it. Oh, you're texting your daughter? But no. Oh, you're doing the same thing. They're checking on your kids. Do you have the app? You built it. It's too late. It better not be. One of the things they found is several thousand other people whose data is now out in cyberspace all over, never actually bought the app. What some people did was put a friend's name in. Oh. You got it. See, I think while we've been so ingrained, so consumed by the external incoming fire from Common Core, from tests, from evaluation, we were asleep. We were asleep to what was happening in terms of what we need to teach. Because when we looked at the nation's most rapidly improving schools, the schools that said, we give up, we're going to do what's best, put a stake in the ground 5 years out. You know what we found? Is that they went back to the debate I lived early in my career as a school teacher and then later as an administrator. The debate about sex education in this country was divisive. Man, was it? Some of you remember it? And then drug education. What do we teach? How do we do it? These schools had put social media education on equal footing with sex education and drug education in the 21st century. Makes sense to you? Do you agree we need to teach the kids? Forgive my language. Where the hell are you going to find any time to do it? You guys take two things off the plate before you have one. What you take off the plate is even more difficult to come to grips with than what you put on with. I've showed you the bad side of technology. I'd like to take you to the good side for a minute. Because overall, technology is good. I want to show you a picture, a video of a little girl. This little girl was born with very, very serious visual problems. They believe she only could see shadows, dark and white, but she really couldn't see things. So what they did was through technology, they implanted something actually in her eyes, and she wears a pair of glasses now that look like glasses that enable her to see. And I want to show you because when they first put the glasses on this little baby, and she saw her parents for the first time.
Piper, hi. I think you did. Hey.
Let me give you one more example. The next example to me is very, very, very powerful because you remember my story about my son Paul? This is not Paul, okay? But I can relate to it because of Paul. He's the one that was in the bad accident, severed the inner ear. How many have heard of the cochlear implant? Okay, adaptation of that now is new technology where they can go into the inner ear, put a device, and then put what looks like a hearing aid and the little guy can hear. You're going to see a little guy who hears his parents for the first time. Fairly recently, Paul had it implanted, my son. And I was not there the day it happened, but my wife brought our 3 grandsons, his 3 sons, into the room, and she was there when my son heard his children for the first time. Here is a story of a little baby hearing his parents for the first time.
Voting, talking. First hearing aid. Good Sam. Hi.
But I told you, it's not so bad what you say there is.
Technology does wonderful things. But you know what? Technology is very disruptive too. And where it's been really, really disruptive, good but disruptive, is in the workplace. And I want to take you to what's happening in the workplace, and it's about to accelerate over the next 3 to 5 years. It scares me to death. Technology has impacted the American workplace a whole lot. I want you to think about how many people lost a job in the last 5 years because of a kiosk or an ATM. Kiosks and ATMs decimated entry-level jobs. But a strange thing happened. Well, technology decimated the entry-level jobs. Look at the chart. There are more entry-level jobs. How did that happen? And it's for this reason. Because the data and information systems, which will continue to share until 10 o'clock, that it created more jobs at the top, I'm going to show you. And this group up here eats out once or twice a week. That group up there has more help with childcare. That group at the top has somebody help clean your house on occasion, somebody mow their lawns, they take more vacations. That group has created a growing service sector. But the service sector jobs do not pay enough for an individual to be financially independent. Make sense? Let me give you an example. California just increased minimum wage to how much? Anybody know? $15 an hour. Everybody know what Burger King, McDonald's, and Wendy's have announced they're doing? By July 1, 100% kiosks. Won the battle, lost the war. They won the battle, the advocates for it, and they lost the war. Ladies and gentlemen, of everything I'm going to say to you this morning, my next sentence is the single most important sentence of the morning. What technology did to entry-level jobs in the last decade, it is about to do with a vengeance to medium-wage jobs. Because of an anticipatory 3.0 web. What technology did to entry-level jobs, it is about to do with a vengeance to medium-wage jobs. Let me show you some examples. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them, and I'll just fly by 3 others. I'm going to talk about 2 of them because they are so different you wouldn't think they'd have the same impact. The auto industry. Anybody heard about the driverless cars? Okay. This is almost an adaptation of something like the driverless cars. There is now a projection that there will be a dramatic decline in auto mechanics over the next 5 years. And there's great debate on how much that's going to be. The debate seems to range from 40% to 80%. Reduction in auto mechanics. And when I heard it, I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it because we're all driving. And so I had the opportunity to have some interaction with the head of Kia, who then gave me some interaction with the R&D people in the 6th largest auto manufacturers. And it's true for this reason. Today, cars have microprocessors in them. How many in the room have a 2015, or, and I know most of you won't because you're educators, okay? Or a 2015 or 2016 car. How many have them? Has it got a lot more technology on that dashboard than you ever could have imagined a few years ago? Cars today have anywhere from 100 to 150 microprocessors. And each of those little microprocessors would generate all that data you're seeing on your screen and tell you all kinds of stuff. Each of those microprocessors actually have more computing power than the largest mainframe computer on the earth had in 1983, when we started to talk about school reform. The number of microprocessors in the cars are projected, depending on the car and the make, to increase from 300 to 500 in the next 5 years. And those microprocessors gather all kinds of information and communicate with each other. Anybody ever hear of nanotechnology? N-A-N-O. Nanotechnology. How about robotization? It's the integration of robotization and nanotech. And if you go out around the Albany area, the Malta area, the Utica area, those whole areas are booming because of nanotech and robotization. And what these are tiny microscopic sized robots that can perform tasks that you used to have a bring car in to be dealt with. And the microprocessors communicate to the robot. I'm going to show you an example. The video I had was given to me by the auto dealers, auto manufacturers. I understand there's actually a version of this now playing on television. I haven't seen the actual version on television, but you probably will. Have any of you seen the version of the car that brakes itself? Young guys drive, a man driving his middle school daughter to school. Yeah. Okay, well, it's like that. Here's a car that drives over potholes. And they put eggs and ping pong balls in the potholes. And the car drives right over them and doesn't break them. I want you to watch it, then I'll tell you what's happening, and I'll tell you the implication to education. How did that happen? You've seen the ad on TV where the car brakes automatically. You've heard about the driverless cars. This is a case where there are microprocessors in the front bumper. Doesn't matter the speed you're driving. It identifies any pothole in front of you, the length of the pothole, the depth of the pothole, and the width of the pothole. The microprocessor in the bumper communicates to a microprocessor in the shocks that communicate to the miniature-sized nanotech robots, and it lifts the car over the hole. Drive down the thruway about every 100 feet, does it go thump, 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 no more. Takes them away. Think about what that does to the impact on the vehicle. It reduces the need for lots and lots of maintenance. The braking automatically so it doesn't hit another car. Stops tons of accidents. And so that's your new cars. By the way, that was a Ford Fusion, not a high-end car. Who do you think doesn't like this? The mechanics. Specifically what business? The dealerships. Where do dealerships make all their money? In service, not in selling the car. They're against it. So you know what they're going to do? The dealerships and the manufacturers are working together, and And when you go to buy cars in the immediate future, you will not simply buy the car. You'll have to buy an online service, which will have them turn on in year 3 the 500 microprocessors. You don't do it, won't turn them on. That's how they're going to make them up. Mechanics, done. Sitting in this seat right here last night, Don was the district superintendent from Nebosis. Anybody know what the second largest career and tech ed program in New York State is? Auto Tech. What program has by far the greatest amount of square footage it costs to run? Auto Tech. I wonder how the Auto Tech teachers feel about this. See, what's happening is the auto industry has made a decision. We were dealing, when it comes to maintenance of cars, with intervention. You have a problem, you bring it in, we charge you. They move to prevention, and the data system permits them to do that. Okay? And that data system accumulates data constantly about cars, all these new cars, which helps them refine even future manufacturing and improves the data system. How many in this room have had a physical sometime in the last 12 months? Everybody's had a physical in the last 12 months. Hands way up. Anybody that has it, you need to have it. I say that with deep sincerity. You need to have an annual physical because of the capacity of the technology today to determine things early. And key is early detection. But all you have had a physical in the last year. See if I got it right. Your physician spent more time looking at a computer and peppering you with questions than they did physically examining you. Am I right? How come? Didn't used to do that. Affordable Health Care Act. See, with the Affordable Health Care Act, your physician was required by January 1 with anybody getting physicals. And moving forward, anybody who hasn't had a physical, you'll see the first time or next time you have one. They have rubrics, detailed information about you, because they have broken every one of us into one of 3 categories. You are either a high-risk patient, a medium-risk patient, or a low-risk patient. Or a low-risk patient. They did that for this reason. If you exclude last year of life from the formula I'm going to give you, 3% of the U.S. population consumes 50% of all healthcare costs in this nation. 3% represents 50% of the national cost. 45% represents 47%. I'm sorry, 47% of the people represent 45% of the cost. And 50% of the people represent 5% of the cost. So the 50% that only represent 5% of the total cost, they're called low-risk patients. The 47% that consume 45% of the cost, they're medium risk, and the 3% that consume 50% of our cost are high risk. And so, do we know how to improve overall people's health? Yell some things out we need to do to improve people's health. Exercise. Weight. Don't smoke. Don't drink too much. Reduce stress. Sleep well. Eat well. We know what to do, right? And so, what they're trying to do is say we've got to move from intervention to prevention. And so the doctor is rewarded if he or she can move you from a high risk to a medium risk. They get rewarded. Their reimbursement rates. If you're a patient and you're sick and you go in to be treated by your doctor, on average, their reimbursement rate Medicaid, Medicare, and required by the Affordable Health Care Act of all the insurance companies, required the companies to do it, is they cut their reimbursement rates by 20%. Folks, that would be like, John, that would be like cutting your state aid to school by 20%. How would you survive? But what they did was make the total amount of money available to the doctors the same. How did they do that? They put all that savings into a bonus program. And the doctor is given a bonus at the end of the year if she or he can move patients from high risk to medium risk to low risk. And your doctors have a portal they now put up. They can send you information, peppering you with suggestions. Anybody in the room wear a Fitbit? How many in the room have a Fitbit? Okay, give you all that information, can't they? The new Fitbits, the newest ones. Yeah, and you can do it with your cell phone, exactly. The new ones. You know that they you can have your information sent directly to your doctor if you choose to, just like it comes to you. Yeah. My daughter, the severely disabled daughter, she has a lot of home health aides in addition to Bonnie and I. And so we're not necessarily with her every hour of the day. What do you think is really important for Audrey? Keep moving. Exercise. Eat right. Do things right. And so, annual physical with Audrey that Bonnie and I both went to our doctor with, we agreed that she should do 6,000 steps a day. Would be a good target for Audrey. So a few weeks ago on a Friday morning, Bonnie got an email from our doctor. Now you know the doctor really didn't generate this thing. It was generated by the system. But it said, Bonnie, we agreed that Audrey would walk 6,000 steps a day. She has missed it for 10 straight days. Bonnie was very thankful to get that information. Who do you think she talked to right away? The aides. Yes, very good. Great. Until the afternoon, when Bonnie got a second email saying, Bonnie, we agreed you would walk 10,000 steps. What's my point? Whether it's the auto industry or healthcare, financial investments, I won't get into it today, supermarkets, drugstores, manufacturing, they are all moving to prevention rather than intervention, early data. And that data system is gigantic. Remember I showed you the spike thing? Remember I talked about the microscope versus telescope? The amount of information that's going to be out there to help make good health decisions, save lives in cars, but also intrude upon their privacy if you're not careful. Our kids have no clue. And when you begin to look at that, it's not just the robots in the plants, painting of houses, it's welding, it's house cleaning. McKinsey report, released in January, told us that 5% of all the jobs in this country are going to be eliminated in the next 3 years by this technology. So that's 5% of the people in your community. Bigger issue is 30% of the task that 60% of the remaining workers in this nation use will be displaced as tasks by the technology. We're paying no attention because we had too much incoming fire coming at us. The high-performing schools said, I'm putting a stake in the ground, I'm going to try to figure out what kids need to know, do, and be like. But here's the bad news. It still means we've got to change. We still all got to change. If we're going to prepare kids for this world that they're going to live in. Because the rest of the world is changing. The rest of the world is raising their educational standards. They don't look like our standards anymore. They're paying attention to what's the math, science, language, art skills that underpin all of this. And so the third trend is what we heard about college and career ready. Remember the 4 words under the state standards? And by the way, every state in the country, whether a common core state standard or not, all adopted the same 4 words. What were they? College and You know what we heard? We heard or. Because of our fixed mindset. We didn't even hear college ready, we heard college prep. We didn't even hear career ready, we heard career and tech ed. It was our fixed mindset. Let me show you why they said that. And this next set of slides are the reason I think some of you may want my PowerPoint. By the way, there's yellow sheets up in front here. If at the end you want my PowerPoint, just come up and put your email here. They're also on the tables in the back. Just give it in and we'll send you the PowerPoint. We'll also send you the website where you got some of the notes, especially in this next section. Because I think some of the stuff I'm going to show you in the next section, you ought to get to the kids and maybe to the parents. Okay, especially when I show you what's happening in college and in careers. National data. In our 2-year colleges last year, 44.5% of our kids dropped out in the first year. In our 4-year colleges, 34.8% of our kids dropped out in the first year. If any high school in this state had that dropout rate, the state would take you over in a blink of an eye. And nobody had paid any attention until recently. In our 2-year colleges nationwide, we are graduating 29.1% of our kids in 3 years. These are the ones that go full time. In our 4-year colleges, we are graduating 36.6% at the end of 5 years. But you know what every high school in the state tells the parents on graduation night? With great pride, how many are going to college? Do you ever tell them how many completed? Anticipatory 3.0? Mark my words. Within a year, somewhere there's a list of all your graduates from some graduating year. Somewhere. And some parents are going to go on and say, let's look at the class of 2010. And somewhere we'll show whether they ever, each of the students, somewhere in that huge data system, ever graduated. And they'll track it as quickly as you Google something today. See, anticipatory 1.0 web gave you little bites of information. 3.0 will do data analytics for you. Ask open-ended questions that they know. We'll analyze them for you. So, you know what they're going to find out? It's how the graduates are in your 2 high schools are doing. And guess what social media is going to do to anybody who becomes anti your schools? Scares the living daylights out. Let me give you New York data. 4-year colleges. Let me give you New York State 2-year college data. 10.9%. How are we doing? Gallup poll. Ask high school teachers in America. This is nationwide. Are college freshmen well or very well prepared for college? 89% of the teachers said yes. 26% of the college professors said yes. Also Gallup. 40% of the kids, and this is a study of 70,000 students nationwide, 40% of the kids who had high school A averages are in remediation in a community college. 50% of those with a B plus or A minus are in remediation, and 60% with a B average. But higher ed is beginning to be questioned. Why? Because they're not doing so well themselves. This is a Gallup study. 98% of chief academic officers in our universities felt that they were very well or somewhat prepared for the workplace, their graduates. A survey of business college graduates themselves after graduation and of employers put it at 11 and 13%. To say that this is statistically significantly important, as a minor statement. So I'm going to ask a big question. Is college worth it? And the answer is often, absolutely yes. But the answer is it depends. It depends. Not because overall they're not doing better. There's the cost of starting salaries last year. High school dropouts, high school graduates, 4-year college graduates. I mean average salary, not sorry. But I want you to study this really carefully for a minute. Look at the salaries for these 5 majors coming out of community colleges. Just look at the dollar amounts. Now look at the salary for the 4-year college graduates out of a selected group of majors, which happen to be the 5 fastest growing majors in our colleges. I had a parent last night take exception to say, yeah, but my kid wants it. They like that major. It's okay. Just understand the consequence of a really, really, really important piece of information, which is what you major in matters a lot. A lot. 2-year colleges, 4 years. However, there are some great 4-year majors. Look at these salaries. These are almost as good as the teaching salaries. In today's technological world, what you major in matters a lot. 25% of 4-year college graduates earn no more than the median high school graduate in this country. And why that becomes really important is because the cost of higher education, the cost of healthcare in this country is skyrocketed. And since 1985, it went up 286%. Look what higher ed is. Now, important. This is in 2015 dollars, so it's consistent. Our 4-year colleges, just tuition and fees, have tripled. 4-year public schools, more than tripled. 2-year public schools, tripled. While we starve K-12 education. And every elected official on both sides of the aisle are beginning to talk about this. We need to share it with our kids. And by the way, it is not just tuition and fees. We've got to add all these other things. Room and board, books, personal expenses, travel, total, and it doesn't cost lost income. So the question is it worth it? Well, it also depends on the college you go to. Look at the cost of some of these colleges. For a $35,000 job. Is college worth it? Absolutely. If you do 3 things. Major in the right major. Complete it on time. And choose carefully where you go. They just got to tell the kids that information. And if they want to major in theater, it's fine. If they want to major in psychology, it's fine. Just understand there are no jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, because I want to make sure we end in time, I'm not going to explain a bunch of additional PowerPoint slides here to you. I'm just going to show you what's in the deck. Because remember, if you want the slides, you can get them, and there'll be white papers that back up the slides. Career writing, we're not doing too well in. There are 13 million people unemployed, drawing unemployment insurance, but there are 3.8 million jobs that have now been vacant for at least 6 consecutive months that pay over $50,000 a year, and the employers can find no workers. Why aren't the 13 million taken to 3.8 million jobs? Skills. There's a list here of the 10 most common majors in American universities. General studies is now the second most common major, which means no major. Come and stay as long as you would like. Behind it are the other nations. The other industrialized nations have really focused on what you major in. Lost jobs. These are projected job losses in this country by the Bureau of Labor Statistics over the next 8 years. For example, accountants and auditors, 94% job loss. Why? Because you can write an algorithm for a job. The job is gone. Economists, 43%. These are not low-level jobs. Folks, these are the jobs that the people in your community now hold. When they lose their jobs and their kids are coming home deep in debt, Congress says, I want no part of that. How are you going to position your district to both prepare kids, answer the questions in a social and media-driven environment that once they turn on you, it becomes vicious? The issue is college ready is important, but it's not enough. Demographics, we're getting older as a nation. That's the key issue. And the key issue as a nation, as we get older, 50% of white families who filed for Social Security last year had total liquid assets of under $10,000 a year. And forgive me, they don't have the retirement systems we have in Michigan. 75% of black families had total liquid assets of under $10,000, 80% of Hispanics. They are one financial hiccup away from financial disaster. We have 45 million people today over 65, soon to be 80 million. APPR is going to become the biggest competitor for public dollars head-to-head against public education in the next 5 years. Clear as can be to me. And we're not even yet somehow bringing them into the fold, talking to them, getting them engaged. I go past that and hit briefly as we close. Don or the staff, I would love at some point to come back and spend a half a day with this entire audience on what I'm going to spend 5 minutes on, which is, what do you teach? How do you teach it? What did these schools find out? The math we need is statistics. It underpins all the data systems. But it doesn't mean a course in statistics. It means integration K-12. Other nations have done that. It means deep data analytics and being able to make judgments about the data. It means reading, yes, but it's technical reading. You read a manual differently than you read a novel. And how many in this audience to this day still have at least one clock in your house or in your car, 1 hour off, 6 months a year? But the key thing you need is what D. Everybody look at the list and yell out for me in a second. What two numbers on this chart do you think all kids need to function at in the world we have described to be independent as adults? Is it 1 and 2, or is it 4 and 5? What two numbers on this chart does the state test measure? We just defined the problem. We got the entire system fixated on 1 and 2. Now, there's nothing wrong with 1 and 2. I can't get to 4 and 5 if I don't have 1 and 2. You all recognize this as Bloom's taxonomy? He called it the knowledge taxonomy. If you put Bloom's or academic rigor up the left-hand side, application across the bottom, and break it into quadrants. Quadrant A is low-level knowledge with no application. It's the state test. C is rigorous academics. It's college ready. B is real-world application. foundation of basic knowledge. That's career and tech ed. Career ready? Career ready is B. Our problem is if you look at that line, we are regulated, certified, tenured, contracted, buildings built, training in A and C. In a world that needs B and D. The nation's most rapidly improving schools are focused on B and D. And guess what happened to the test scores that they did? They went through the roof. Because the kids became motivated. They used the technology. That's what Google has understood. See, Google is going to become our biggest players, partnered with the gaming companies. The games are engaging, personalized, built around growth models. And all the major gaming companies are now building games around the state stadiums. Partnering with Google to bring them into virtual reality. Building academic skills as you play your game. And K-12, the biggest online provider in the country, and the University of Phoenix, and Southern New Hampshire University, all online players are partnering with it. And I got a question. You're going to bring the technology into your schools, or are you going to draw a line and keep them out? And if you keep them out, are we in big trouble? Because somebody else will say I can do it quicker, cheaper. Now, the good news is what I just described. You are safe for one primary reason. And I don't like to say it, but you're safe because your community still sees you as child care. But we are more than child care, aren't we, folks? Every industry has changed. The nation's most rapidly improving schools, the 25 elementary, middle, and high school. They're coming together on June 26 through 29 in Orlando, Florida for 4 days. And all they're going to do is come together and tell their story. This is how we did it. They're not working harder than you are. I suggest you're working harder than they are because you have permitted, not intentionally, but to live in this incredibly stressed environment. Get the kids engaged. Let them try some things differently. How you need to do it, here's my advice. As tight as resources are, remember you got to figure out what to take off the plate. These schools figured out what to take off the plate. I invite you to send some of your top 1/3 to Orlando for 4 days and see what these schools are doing. Following the conference, next fall we're going to run site visits into the schools. And what do I want then? I want your key teachers and teacher leaders to go visit these schools. I want teachers to talk to teachers, principals to talk to principals, superintendents to talk to superintendents, board to talk to board. You know it when you see it. And then let that top third come back and try some things differently. Middle 1/3, just watch. If it works, adopt it. If it doesn't, don't. Take control, is my advice. The announcement of that conference is up here. It's also on the back. The yellow sheets are up here. If you would like to copy my PowerPoint, just fill it out, throw it back. I close with a final word to you. I keynoted the National School Boards Convention this past year. I was honored with how they introduced me. They introduced me as America's greatest advocate for public education. I hope I take to my deathbed that mission. Why? Because which kids do you educate? Thank you for what you do. God bless you.